Okay, so this set of notes is about what we're going to call scatterplots. And when you have a scatterplot, you have two types of data. So you have like a list of x's, a list of y's, and they correspond. So like the x's belong to the same person, the same person, the same person, the same person, and they're collected kind of in a paired way. So the x that corresponds to person 1, this is the y that corresponds to these people, x, y, so forth and so on. Okay, what we do is, so this is numeric, right? We put the x values along this axis, the y values along this axis, and for each of these individuals, we find their x value and we find their y value, and we put a point. And so that might be the point for person number 1, and number 2 in my list might be a point there, and number 3 in my list could be a point here, and maybe number 4 in my list might be a point here. Okay, so what a scatter plot does is it gives me an idea about how well are the x and y correlated. If this starts to form some sort of pattern, then I can see some sort of correlation between these two values. Now, it doesn't mean that x causes y or anything like that. That's something that you would have to prove independently of statistics. But we do have a sense from a scatter plot whether or not these two things are correlated. So the next thing we need to do is look at how do we make one using our calculator. Okay, so if you look in the notes for this section, you'll find this table where you have a list of students, and then you have their combined SAT scores and their combined ACT scores, their composite ACT scores, and we want to know if there's some correlation between these values. So we're going to create a scatter plot, and we're going to use the calculator to do that, and then examine what we get. Okay, so as always, the first thing we want to do is we want to turn on our calculator, and we're at the main screen. So we're going to enter these two lists into the stats function here. So I want to hit stat and pick number 1, and then I'm going to put the SAT combined scores into L1. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, so we've got 10 of those, right? And then we're going to put the ACT composite scores into L2. So we're putting them, oops, sorry, nope, that one doesn't exist. We're putting them side by side just the way they are in the table. So now we have 10 SAT composite or combined scores and 10 ACT composite scores, and we're good, and now we're ready to make a plot. Okay, so we're going to get back to the main screen, so I hit second mode, puts me back to the main screen. I want to turn on a plot, so I'm going to hit second y equals. I'm going to choose plot number 1. I'm going to turn on that plot, and I'm going to choose the option for the scatter plot, which is the very first one here. So that's already highlighted. My x values are in list 1. That's my SAT combined scores. My ACT composite scores are in list 2. And for a scatter plot, I tend to like to use the little crosses because it makes a nice, neat little picture. Now, I have to get the computer to window this correctly. So I'm going to hit zoom, and I'm going to go down to the zoom stat option, which is number 9, right? So I hit that, and boom, there's my scatter plot. Okay, so boom. All right. So if you look at the graph here, there is a seeming connection here, that it looks like we have a bit of a trend where if the SAT score is going up, it also looks like the ACT composite score is going with it. This person over here seems a little bit off the beaten path. Maybe they had a really good day on the SAT and a really bad one on the ACT, or there might be something going on with that person, so we might want to look at what explains that. But the rest of them all seem to have this nice correlated trend here, where if you raise one score, the other one seems to go up. Alright, so they seem to increase and decrease together, which I think is pretty reasonable and what we would expect. So in short, a scatter plot is just a visual representation of data that shows the connection between two measurements being taken of the same sample or population. These plots can often be used to talk about whether or not there's a correlation between these two measurements. Okay, so let's go make some scatter plots.